Hello, I'm John Roser, Executive Director of Scituate Community Television here at SCTV, and today we're here with Jim Cantwell, State Representative from Massachusetts. And we're here to learn a little bit about what the State Representative does and what Jim does for Scituate, as well as the citizens that live here. So Jim,
John,
hello.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Appreciate the invitation.
Good to see you. Maybe we could start off by you telling us what a typical day is for a state representative here in Massachusetts.
The greatest thing about my job is there really is no typical day. Every single day things change, John. So on issues, half of my job is to tackle issues. So from A to Z. Just a few years ago we had some constituents come. I do office hours every month, once over at Town Hall, once over at the Senior Center. And when the people came in and were talking about the need for certain services for children who have autism, and talked about how insurance companies were not paying for these critical services. Every study was showing when you can start with children very young and give them some help, how that helps them to be independent for the rest of their lives. So that was A. We did a model bill for services for children with autism. From Z, when I was at Town Hall with Laura Harbottle and with Trish Van Casey and others, talking about how we need to look at zoning to try to help us here in Scituate to attract more business. So discussing things we do down in Greenbush and the like, other ways to try to attract housing without overwhelming our town. That would be the Z. A to Z and everything in between. So from that aspect, it's just a phenomenal job where every day I get to come home with a new briefing book on a new issue, and I tell my wife it's like going back to college, and I get to learn something. So those are the issues. The other every day that's different is people call, and one of the proudest things I do is I'm a resource. So if people will call and they might have an issue with the registry, that can be more minor, right? We can work those things out. We've had people call when their insurance company is not going to pay for life-sustaining treatment, and my job is to call and to do battle with the insurance company to pay, so that in one case a woman was having a stem cell transplant over at Dana-Farber, and her insurance said they thought it was experimental. So we called the doctors and they said, hell no, we do this all the time. We called others. So it's those kinds of things, John. Every day people will call and they'll have items that could range in that matter. And then it's everything in between. It's a wonderful job. It's a great way to help people, and just thrilled to do it and thrilled to be here today to talk about it.
So you are on the road, you're out and about in the community, and advocating for specific citizens as well as working for things like flood insurance.
Right.
And I know that is something that is extremely important to residents here in Scituate. Maybe you can talk a little bit about the flood insurance, some of the changes and some of the things that citizens should be aware of here in Scituate.
Absolutely. And John, for flood insurance, people here in Scituate and Marshall should be so very proud, because our two little towns, we changed federal law. When this came out, David Ball, we were at a meeting with the Scituate Selectmen, and David did a report saying, listen, just 1 week ago, this is last July, he was ringing the bell saying that the federal government had changed the way that flood insurance was done. Now to start, it's a very successful program, and most of our residents in Scituate and Marshfield who live close to the coast have to have it. And by the way, from back when it started in 1968 right up to Hurricane Katrina, it was a phenomenally successful program that returned over $10 billion to the federal treasury. Unfortunately, instead of putting it into an account just for reserves like an insurance company would, it got put into the general fund and was spent. But what has happened, John, is just with Katrina and with Sandy, all of a sudden it looked like there was a deficit, and the federal government overreacted. And what they ended up doing, John, and what David Ball educated all of us, is they changed the rules and told people out there, people watching here now know it, that we had folks who were receiving bills with $68,000 charges for 1 year of insurance. It's just outrageous. And it would have driven people out of their homes. So my job, this is what I'm so proud about, is my job, we got our officials from our two towns together, we went right into Boston, had a meeting with FEMA, and we were saying, listen, this is outrageous. You're going to hurt on property values. We were able to bring meetings with realtors, Jack Conway and company. Carol was there at the beginning. Liz Charlton was there at the beginning. So that realtors would say, we're going to lose some 60 or 70% of the value of our homes overnight. We were able to bring people to meet from the banking world. Joe Norton, here from Scituate, former selectman, was with Rockland Trust. He was able to articulate that it was going to cause a widespread foreclosure crisis. Trish Van Casey was there, the selectman John Dennehy was there, Sean Harris. They talked about how we would not be able to pay for our services for police, fire, and teachers because of all the lost revenue. David Ball, as a citizen, talked of how people were going to lose everything in their home. So the reason I get to that, it was a community-led effort, and because we did such a great job, we were seen as the leaders, not just here in Scituate, not just in Massachusetts, but nationally. Every Friday we were on the phone calling around with people around the whole country, and we got the federal government to change their regulations and to put significant reforms so people can afford to stay in their homes. It's one of the proudest things that I would say that we've done in the last year.
Why was somebody getting a bill for $68,000? Like, what was the change that happened from one point to another that created such a disparity in the insurance premiums?
It's a phenomenal question, and I didn't learn about it till we flew to Washington. I was back and forth to Washington twice, and there was a U.S. senator who was from Mississippi who was very much opposed to the flood insurance program, saying that in his mind, and he kept saying this time and again, and people here in Scituate would know this is not true, but he was saying, look, all we're doing is insuring all those rich people, all those millionaires. We need to defund the National Flood Insurance Program and make people pay what he called actuarial rates, which would be what the insurance companies would charge out on the free market if there wasn't a underwriting of the government. So overnight, by doing actuarial rates, they looked at different properties and they said for all the properties that were out near the lighthouse, every single one of those were rated as a high risk, and people, even though people had raised their homes, even though a number of them had never had claims, just the insurance company said there's such a huge risk. If Sandy were to strike here, those homes would be gone, so therefore we want to charge the higher rates. So it was person after person getting bills. The highest that I saw was $68,000. There were a number of them that were in the $45,000. Even folks who had never, John, had never seen a drop of water inland were getting bills for, it was going to be between $3,000 and $10,000. It would have been disastrous for our entire economy.
Right, and that's I think that's the bottom line, was that it was untenable for lots of people. It would have literally meant that they would have lost their home.
Absolutely so.
So that's amazing. That's changed. That's happened recently. That's affected people here, and that's like a positive change for our community.
And what I point to, it's so that people will know it matters when they will go and meet with their Scituate selectmen. It matters when they come to office hours that I have here, twice a month here in Scituate, twice a month in Marshfield. It matters when they pick up the phone and they call. My office number is 617-722-2140. If there's something that's on people's minds, I want them to know this is the biggest example of how citizens banding together, how we were able to make a change. And I always say how proud I am, because we took action as a result of what we did, John, the federal government. We proved that they got the maps wrong, by the way. That meeting I mentioned, the very first meeting I put together in Boston, where we had everyone from Scituate officials, Marshfield officials, they put a map up on the wall, and they were showing where they said waves were going to be hitting with a 100-year storm. Now, we all know a 100-year storm is supposed to be once in 100 years. It's like the blizzard of 1978. We know exactly where the water was. We know the damage. Serious storm. But they were predicting that there'd be waves 3.5 feet tall that would be down in Front Street, 3.5 feet tall that they said were going to hit in Marshfield Center. And I just said, look, we know that's not the case. So we went to work. And we hired our own experts, both Scituate, Marshfield, and actually Duxbury joined, proved that their maps were inaccurate. Congressman Keating hired some folks and had people from UMass Dartmouth look at the maps. And what they found is the methodology of what was used, they were using wave analysis that applied to the Pacific coast, where waves are much higher. And they started with the wrong elevation for where the water was at the beginning. So that's why they were off so greatly. So I start with David Ball, because he's the one that really, he's the unsung hero who brought it to my attention and others. And throughout the place, we hitting the bell, sounding the alarm, made changes at the state and federal level. And as a result, 2,000 homeowners in Scituate and Marshfield don't need flood insurance right now. And everyone else who had flood insurance is saving a tremendous amount of money. And it started with people banding together. So it's a nice story about citizens making a difference. The issue I always talk about, a part of my job, and even when I'll mail things out, of saying the coastal connection. My job is connecting people at all levels of government. So when we're talking our coastal issues, for example, we'll have calls that will come in and people will say, we have a real concern right now that we have rocks that are coming up on after a storm that are getting in the road, and we're concerned we need to get those removed, or we've had some damage to our seawall, or those types of matters. And people will call and I'll say, you know what, that's an absolute legitimate concern, and that's touching all levels of government now. Because locally, well, I'll call Kevin Cafferty and say, Kevin, At the local DPW, these are some concerns people have. They can't get back and forth out of their home. Or when it was more serious, before with Chief Scituate, anytime there's a major storm, people should know that we're on the lines, because I have like a speed dial right into the National Guard, that I'll come over, we'll have our shelter, and we'll be calling right from there saying this is the kind of help that we need. By the way, we have to thank Rick Judge, who just retired.
Right.
We say talking now locally,
Yeah.
Rick, not only was he our public safety expert who would be helping to direct the fire department, not only did he work with state folks, but he would actually run the shelter. He and Kathy were opening up the shelter. I'd go over there and we'd be on the phones together trying to help direct a response. State level is just that. So, storm happens, we get some stones and the like, and there's damage to the seawalls. So we first direct people locally to get things cleaned up. Second part is, what can I do? And what I'm very proud that I've led, I helped to co-author legislation. We got $30 million to try to help with seawall repair and dam repair or dam removal, which we'll talk about in a moment. Yeah. But at the state level, it was saying, we have all up and down the coast, our town, Scituate, really was the canary in a coal mine, that we had one seawall that collapsed. If people remember, the December 26th storm just 3 years ago, and there was damage to over 100 homes. So my job was to bang the drum and tell people we need to invest in infrastructure, and I'm really proud to say that Scituate just got $4 million to make improvements from the state. We're now talking to the federal government how they have a role. The federal government helped build all these seawalls back in the Franklin Delano Roosevelt era. They were built. We need the federal government to come back and help us repair them. So that's just one example. Someone calls and it touches every level of government. And then, as we were talking off air before, that when calls come in, I can get calls on my cell phone as I'm driving in town. And as I mentioned, my cell phone number is 781-837-1960, goes right to my cell. If I don't get it, it'll go up to the State House. But people may call and they can have other issues. Sometimes, John, if they're not a state issue, I can immediately be able to refer them to our federal counterparts. So again, people called me before, very concerned about the war in Syria and concerned about our bombing Syria. Right. And I said, valid concerns. They had national security implications. And I said, even though that's not something I do on Beacon Hill, I'm happy to take all your information and to pass it to our partners in federal government. But that's my job. My job is I'm really that connection. So it's at all levels, and it's really important to know people at each of those levels to make sure you've built a good relationship and you can help your constituents.
So part of what we do here at Scituate Community Television is we record meetings, events, and performances. We have original programming, but we also work closely with several different groups around town. We work with Council on Aging, the seniors. We also work with the veterans, creating public service announcements and other things. Maybe you can talk a little bit about those things, some work that you've done with the veterans here and the seniors. So
with an example there as well, to show how people can make such a huge difference locally and then how it affects national issues. We had just several years ago, John, people who are watching here may know or have heard of a group called the Westboro Baptist Church. Truly a group of evil people. And what they would do is when there would be a death of someone in the service, they would go to funerals and they would protest. They'd hold up signs basically telling the loved ones that your loved one died serving our country, you're the hero that died, and they would say that God made them be killed because they'd say God doesn't like gay people or God doesn't like this and that. Truly terrible things. Supreme Court ruled that is protected speech, which I understand, but the Supreme Court also has said in the past that your speech cannot be there to incite riots. You can't run into a crowded theater and falsely yell fire. There are those standards. So we can regulate time, place, and manner of speech. So when that decision was handed down, I happened to be over doing office hours. I was speaking to Ed Cantwell, who was the former commander of our American Legion, and we said, this is outrageous. We can't allow this to stand, that these groups can think they can come and protest when a hero has given his or her life. And just think of the Kellys here in town, having their son Michael. And what they have done with such grace to keep his memory alive. So we acted, wrote legislation that I'm very proud to say was incorporated into the Valor Act, was recently passed. Had Ed and I went up and we testified before the committee hearing all these issues and said we need to do something. And as a result of Ed's advocacy, my hard work, we were able to make sure now if someone protests at a funeral of someone who has been killed in the line of duty, that they can be punished. And if they can be harsh, it's jail as well as heavy fines. that's the kind of thing that people watching, when we look at issue after issue, how they everyone knowing how your government can work when you stand up and say that here's an issue that needs to be addressed. So that's just one of many. On any issues, here with Don Knapp, who is our Veterans Services Officer, and Gary Carlo, God bless him, who was the Veterans Services Officer, just passed away just this week.
I love Gary, yeah.
That my job is to help them, to make sure that when a veteran comes in or a loved one and needs, perhaps it's going to be some assistance, financial assistance. So we know how these people have earned it. They've worked darn hard and they've sacrificed. So we are the most charitable, if that's the right term, group in the nation, our state, to help our veterans. Many people don't know that. We do the most for educational benefits, for general assistance benefits, for healthcare benefits of any state. I'm very proud of it, and it's because of the work of people like Gary Carlo or Don Knapp or Ed Cavell. So that's what we've been doing on veterans issues.
Maybe you could talk a little bit about some of the work that you've done with seniors here.
Absolutely.
Here at SCTV, we're big fans of Florence Choate.
Love Florence.
And also Linda.
Both, who's just taken over.
Yeah, and so we've been supporting them and working with them all the way through the last few years. And I know that they're facing a lot of different challenges. How would a state representative work with the seniors here in Scituate?
Yeah, and it's both. It's on the day-to-day needs and then the big picture needs. So first on the day-to-day needs, Florence Choate, my goodness, what a wonderful, wonderful resource. And again, Linda Hayes. Linda Hayes does a great job.
And Linda too.
So Florence, let me give some examples. Florence, years ago when I first was elected, had called and was saying, Jim, I know it's a real difficult budget time, but we have these formula grants that help us to make sure that we can run programming for seniors, to make sure everything from maybe Meals on Wheels, getting people appointments for doctors and driving around. In one instance, she said, our bus is ready to fall apart. Literally. So we worked very hard on a grant to get a new bus here for Scituate, but it was Florence being right out there in front saying how that needed to be done. A day-to-day issue when we know that storm happened just a couple of years ago. Hurricane, I think it was Irene, was the one that came through, the tropical storm, lost power. It was Florence calling me and saying, Jim, we have people over at Central Park who have not had electricity for 48 hours. And we're concerned because the whole second floor was in darkness. So she called, I drove right over, and we got on the phone with National Grid to make sure they would get out there and make sure people got their power. That's the power that Florence Choate has. You know, the big picture things are just knowing that absolutely clear. We need a new senior center, absolutely clear for the town. The question's always going to be about how can we afford them, and part of my job is to help when the town makes a decision. Town has to decide first what it wants, and then I go to work trying to help get funds, and there are grant funds for senior centers. And that's the kind of thing we'll try to work to make sure that the seniors in this community, one of the fastest growing populations in our town, that they're able to have services. Because study after study shows, John, that if there's a location where people can go who have maybe been shut in and they're feeling lonely, if they can come and socialize with others, maybe get a meal, maybe have a program where people do continued education so they can learn a new language or they can do history. But it extends all of our lives, and it saves us money. Because instead of people having difficulties and maybe being hospitalized, if they can stay in their own home and just have a meal brought in, Meals on Wheels, or for socialization, just take the bus and go with people and see, they are going to be healthier, they're going to live more productive lives, and we won't have to be paying a lot of funds. You know, it shouldn't be dollars and cents, but the truth is we save money at the tail end for some institutions. So that's the kind of work, again, from the day-to-day thing to the big picture. It's another reason why I love what I do.
That's great. And I do want to add in quickly that I've worked with Linda on several different occasions recently, and the services there, the cafe lectures that they have there, and the services that they have are great, and there's something that I think the seniors can really look forward to.
And just because you mentioned Linda, and she works well with Carol Hamilton from Marshall. Now, it was my predecessor, Frank Hines, who's a dear friend, helped when Marshall had gone through this process to have a new senior center. And they really become community centers, by the way, because during the day, it may be folks who are more senior in age, and at night, others after work and the like can use the same building. But the structure in Marshfield, as you walk in, there are people who are doing fitness in one room, and there are people who are doing dance instruction in another. There's a computer room. I just helped Kenny Bell from Marshall turn 90, and I just helped him do his first Facebook page. They have a whole computer room in there. So we sat, he's one of my Facebook friends now. He's a wonderful guy. They have a place for meals that are done. There's another place for people having their hair done. It's really, for a community center, it's phenomenal. And I know, because my father goes there 3 days a week, I just know that those types of community centers are going to extend all of our lives. Right. And I always have to put in terms of because they cost money. Right. In Marshfield's case, half of the money came from the state. But I always talk about what resource will that be for us in a very long time, and how that can long-term save us funds, so that for all the reasons I talked about, can keep people in their homes, so that they're not going to have to go into an institution that costs taxpayers a lot of funds, but they can stay, be active, live fulfilling lives, and really contribute, as you just talked about. People will continue to contribute tremendously to the vibrancy of our community here with just a little bit of help.
Something that Florence said to me once, she said, "John, you know, we're all going to be seniors one day." Which I love. Here at Scituate Community Television, we work a lot with students, we work a lot with kids going to college, and the education is a primary directive of what we do here as well, workshopping and training. So maybe you can talk a little bit about what a state representative does for students in education here in Scituate.
Yeah, the first thing that we do is just for the day-to-day needs. It's to make sure for resources we have at the state level. Everything we've touched upon, the state helps for veterans services, helps for elder services, helps for town services, DPW and like, and clearly a big part is education too. And I'm very proud of the fact that even during the difficult times in the state budget, when we were taking 5 state agencies for transportation and merged them all into one, we had to do layoffs of some 4,400 people. Not because we were happy about it, just it was a very tough time. Everyone who remained in state service had to pay 10% more for health insurance or take a furlough for a week, which is, I did both. So even during those tough times, we made sure to keep a priority for educational funding, and we just voted a record amount of some $4.4 billion of education aid to make sure that as a priority, we're giving resources back for the Scituate school system. And by the way, we should be so proud of our students here at Scituate High School. I come back every year and we talk about awarding grants that are called the Adams Scholarships. 30% of Scituate High School students qualify for free tuition at state colleges because they do so well in the MCAS exam. It's really very impressive. I think it's the best in the whole South Shore. Yeah. So I come for that. So the first thing is helping for day-to-day funding. The other part is to think for big picture issues, trying to make sure for students who, we want to help students who are going off to college, and we, by the way, have frozen the last 3 years, we've frozen state college tuitions as well. Maybe not those 30% who get it for free, but everybody else, we're making a priority. Middle class families just cannot afford what it's costing to send a child to college. So we're trying to make the pressure, if we can keep costs at the same level at the state level, hopefully the private colleges bring it down too. But there's some students who going to college may not be the best decision right away, and they want to get a trade or a manner to make a good living. And I'm so proud that here with Scituate officials and Marshfield officials, we are very close. Within a matter of weeks, we're going to announce having a college come to this district. And it will have Scituate ties. It is going to be located in Marshfield. It was going to be on the Driftway, and the space, it just wasn't big enough. Right. So it's going to be in Marshfield. Going to be a college to help students with marine sciences, people with boat engine repair, with regular boat repair. We are the best laboratory for learning about sea level rise. I don't know how fast it's happening, but we know we're having some. So we're going to have students learning about that. Students learning about something not very sexy, but wastewater management, which is an issue of Scituate, as we're trying to make sure homes can be able to have, to tie in. So it's going to be an opportunity for students who can get an associate's degree and then be making a good living. It will be Massasoit Community College, and we're close to having UMass Boston make an announcement too. But that's when you ask, what does a state representative do? It's looking, what do we need in our town, and how do we bring those people together? And I'm so excited. You're one of the first to hear, and people watching here, it's not even in the news yet, but we're announcing that we're getting close to announcing a college to come to the district.
Another one of the issues facing Scituate today is that of substance abuse, and it's very serious. And here at SCTV, we worked a little bit with Anne-Marie from Scituate Facts. But maybe you could discuss a little bit what you do as a state rep for that here in Scituate. Absolutely.
And again, another story of how local people are making such a tremendous difference. And the selectmen had a very wise decision to apply for a grant that I helped to support, to make sure that we had the funds to formally hire Anne-Marie Galvin, who is just a gem here for the town, working to try to prevent abuse or any use, frankly, of opiates. So what I do at the state level, and then talk about what we're doing together as a partner. At the state level, we recently passed legislation, first of all, to do what's called a prescription drug monitoring program. So we get it, there are people out there who legitimately have health needs, who would need to have some pain medication. But at the very beginning, to try to make sure that doctors have a better training so that they are not just writing out huge prescriptions, giving 90 pills when someone may have just had, could be something like dental work. Right? So there's no need to give people 90 pills for a period of time when they're only maybe going to use 20 of them and then have 70 sitting in a medicine closet somewhere, which is very dangerous. But so one bill that we have, a prescription drug monitoring program, is in case someone has become addicted, and they're trying to doctor shop. If I go to one particular doctor, I go to Dr. Charlton. I go to the doctor and I get my prescription there. And then if I want to go and I'm looking to go to Dr. Cantwell next, the first doctor is supposed to write in that they just did the prescription, and then that gets into a database. So if the person goes shopping to another doctor, it pops up and they know that there's a problem. Right? So that's one way to try to cut down on abuse. A second thing, we've mandated prescription pads that can't be easily duplicated. People in the past would find unbelievable ways with the technology we have to reproduce them and try to get more and more. Now, because we do the monitoring program, that cuts that down too. We did legislation that is called the Good Samaritan Law, that sadly in the past you could have people who are users. I want to stress that if someone is pushing this poison out there, we want to throw the book at them and have them severely punished. But this is a problem. We cannot arrest our way out of this problem. As Chief Scituate says, there are people who are addicts that we need to help. And there have been cases in the past of a group of people who are using heroin, and one person ODs. And in the past, people would panic and they would clean up the whole site first and remove anything before they would call for help, and that person could expire. So now, because of the Good Samaritan Law, is if someone calls the police to help someone who's OD'd, they will not be charged. Because they're trying to get help there. They will get help, but we'll make sure we'll try to get those people enrolled in some treatment. So those are some things that we've done at the state level. Local level, Scituate's been at the forefront where we have a prescription drop-off box where anyone watching here, 24/7, if you were in that circumstance and you were given 90 pills for some dental work, you can take that additional, whatever's left over, bring it right to the police station. Get it out of your home. Right. Because one of the things that we're finding is one way that children, young teenagers think because something's prescribed, they think it's safe. And some of these pills, OxyContin, my goodness, someone could take one of those and you could be an addict. There's actually a new drug, Zyhodro, I think that's a term, that the food, FDA, their own scientific panel said do not allow this to be used because it's 10 times more potent than OxyContin. They voted 10-1 not to allow it to get out in the market, and their decision was overturned. Travesty. We're going to, these kinds of drugs, we have to be so careful about them. So that's at the state and local level, and then trying to go for these forums that Anne Marie is the undisputed leader at Scituate Facts. Chief Scituate from the police goes to every one of them. We have public health officials there. The faith community has been unbelievable coming out to organize matters so that we know we're all in this together. This is a public health epidemic, and we need to treat it as one. And that's where I'm thrilled and very pleased to be a partner with people like Anne Marie Galvin and Chief Scituate to try to help us address this issue here locally. So
it has been great talking with you here, Jim.
Likewise,
Thank you for coming to SCTV and talking about your job as state representative. I'd like to end by just maybe giving something for Scituate residents to look forward to.
I think one of the things I love to stress, and we're not that far removed from Heritage Days, which is one of my favorite all-time activities. And what I do at every Heritage Days, I have put a tent there so we can be there to take in, meet everyone who's artisans who are doing wonderful things, every community group, the library talking what they're doing, I always know that it's always one of the baseball teams going to Cooperstown. Love to meet with them. But what I repeat to people who will come up, the A to Z of these people come up and will say, can you help with this? And I love to do whatever I can, give out my card, give out my phone number, and we certainly take these things seriously, as people have heard the examples before. But I also want to repeat to folks, here in Scituate, we have hit the cosmic lottery to be born living in this town at this day and age. We have so many wonderful resources. We have so many terrific people. I'm thrilled to be the representative here for Scituate. When things come up, please do use me as a resource, as we keep saying, that coastal connection, to give me a ring or to email. So my State House number is 617-722-2140, and we can maybe put my email right below that, which is james.cantwell@mahouse.gov.
Yep.
So very good things to come. I look forward to working, John, and look forward to coming more often so we can do a regular session of State House Matters.
Yes, we will. We're going to do this. Thank you very much, Jim.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.